Here's everything you need to know about your credit score. So a credit score is a 3-digit number that is basically like a financial report card. It measures how well you've dealt with credit and debt in the past. It's a way to communicate with who you're borrowing from, like banks or lenders, and it tells them how trustworthy you are. So the higher the number, the more that they trust you, because this shows them that you're on time with your bills, you make sure that you're paying things correctly, and you're actually finishing off all the payments. So this allows them to feel more trustworthy when they're loaning you money. So this is really important when it comes to qualifying for loans, credit cards, or even getting better interest rates. Because if you have a bad score, you're less trustworthy, and that allows them to put a higher interest rate so that way they get more of their money back in return to make sure that they're safe. So let's talk about the different aspects of what makes up a credit score and determine which ones are most important and which ones are least important. So one of the most important things when it comes to credit score is payment history and payment timing. So this makes up about 35% of your credit score, and it's simply how often you are late or on time with your payments in the past. This is the biggest factor on your credit score because lenders use this to determine how often you've been on time or late with your payments in the past. So make sure to never be late on a payment. Again, this is one of the most crucial aspects to your credit score. The next part of your credit score is credit utilization, which makes up around 30% of your credit score. So basically, this is how much money you're able to borrow versus how much you've spent. So let's say you have a $5,000 credit limit total across multiple credit cards, one credit card, whatever it is, and you've spent $2,500. That is a credit utilization rate of 50% because you've spent 50% of the money that they are willing to lend you. This shows lenders your spending habits. If you rarely spend above 20%, it shows the banks and lenders that you're not pulling out a lot of money and that even though you have the available money, you don't actually need it. This is really important because when you're going for something like another loan or for a house mortgage, they're looking at it like, wait, so this person could be spending more money, but they're not, which shows they're probably more financially stable and more financially savvy. But if you're spending all $5,000 a month, basically utilizing 100% of your credit, this can worry lenders because they're noticing that you're probably over leveraging yourself and you're probably not the best at spending. 15% of your credit score is actually made up of what's called credit history. Now, this is an aspect that you can't really change unless you have a time machine. So here's the problem with it, is that the day that you open up your first credit card or get your first loan, mortgage, whatever it might be, is the day that your credit history starts. So clearly you can't change it if you're 35 years old and you already have credit cards. But if you're 16 years old, 17, 18, 19 years old, this can be very important because opening up credit as soon as possible can really help get you a better credit score long term. So why is it important? Well, just think about it logically. If a lender was going to give you money, or let's say you're the lender and you were going to give someone money and they've told you that they've only had a credit history of 3 months, well, it's probably not accurate because it's not hard to be on top and stay afloat for 3 months when it comes to payments, but it is hard to make sure that you're on time with your payments over 3 years, 5 years, 30 years. So the longer you have credit, the better, because they feel like this is a better track record to trust you when lending money. So if you're on time for 20 years of payments, then they're probably gonna go, well, why would today be any different? They're probably gonna still be on time with their payments. Versus again, 3 months, anything can happen because they don't really know you that well. So this is important for those of you who are younger to make sure that you're opening up credit cards, loans, or anything safely at a younger age to make sure that long-term you have a good credit score. Now, the type of credit that you have actually makes up around 10% of your credit score. So what does that mean? Well, those are things like auto loans, mortgages, student loans, and all of these things affect your credit differently. Because if you have a mortgage, that's something called good debt. And the reason for that is that you have a house that you can sell to pay off the loan that you have. So if your house is worth $1 million and you owe $700,000 on it, well, that's not really gonna affect your credit score as much as, let's say, a credit card, because you can always sell the home, pay off the credit, and that way the bank feels comfortable and you've got some money left over. Versus a credit card, if you owe $50,000 on a credit card, not only is the interest rate really high, which scares lenders because you have a lot of payments to make, but on top of that, there's nothing you can sell to cover that payment. And the banks can't necessarily force you to do anything unless they sue you. So these types of things differently affect your credit. So if you've got mortgages versus huge credit card debt, the huge credit card debt is going to massively affect your credit score. So the final 10% of your credit score is made up of credit inquiries. It's when you apply for a credit card, a loan, mortgage, whatever it might be. When you're asking for money, it alerts the bureau, which alerts banks and lenders how many times you've asked for money. So for example, if you're going for a mortgage and they look at your credit score and they notice that you've asked for loans just 3 or 4 times throughout the last couple of years, well, they think, well, this person doesn't really need that much money, so they're probably pretty financially stable, so not a big deal. But if they notice that you've applied for credit cards 27 times over the last 4 months, they're probably going to think that you're desperate, you're probably making bad financial decisions, and that is going to negatively affect your credit score. So very simple, it's just how often you're applying for credit cards. And remember, this isn't a bad thing naturally. If you're going to apply for a credit card or things like that, you can apply for 1 or 2 or even maybe 3 for the year. It's not the end of the world if you apply for multiple, but if you continue to do so over and over again over the years, it can start to look bad to credit lenders who are looking at you like, wait, why do you keep pulling out these loans, or why do you keep even applying for them? Maybe you're getting turned down, which is another scary reason. So just keep that in mind when you're applying for loans, credit cards, and auto loans. Now, credit scores range from 300 to 850. And don't worry, when you're just developing your credit score, it's going to naturally be really low, but this will build up over time. And that's because they're learning about who you are and how you handle money. So your credit score is really new, your credit history is new, you don't have any credit payments on file, so these things take time. So anything under 670 is fair to bad, and anything above 670 to 739 is pretty good. And they consider 740 to 799 as really good, and anything 800 plus is just absolutely excellent. So just because you have an 800 credit score doesn't mean you can go and apply for a $10 million loan. What matters most when it comes to how much you're asking for is simply how much you make monthly versus how much monthly payments that you have. So how do you keep track of your credit score? Well, there are a ton of apps like Credit Karma, or even a lot of built-in apps within banking apps like Chase or Bank of America, where it'll actually show you what's called a soft credit score right in the app. And keep in mind that credit scores aren't updated instantaneously, so when you pay off a credit card, it may not show up on your credit score for weeks or even a month. So now that we know how credit scores work, let's go over some key takeaways on how to build better credit. Well, it's pretty simple. Making sure that you're making all of your payments on time. This is one of the most important aspects of your credit score, making up 35%. So if you're late on a payment, this will really negatively affect your credit score. So please make sure to make your payments on time. The next most important thing, like we talked about, is credit utilization rate. So again, make sure that you're not using every inch of your credit card. So if you've got $10,000 in available credit, try not to use much of it. Try to stay under 20%, which shows the lenders and banks that you aren't desperate for the money and that you are financially savvy. Now, a few last tips on that. Make sure that if you have any issues on your credit score, that you're actually disputing them. So for example, let's say someone incorrectly reported that you missed a payment. Make sure to dispute that as fast as possible. The other thing that's really important is if you have debt, to slowly, continuously pay it down. As it continues to go down, your credit score will continue to rise. So now let's go over some myths when it comes to credit scores, because we all know that our parents scared the hell out of us when it came to this. My parents told me that if I opened up too many credit cards, or if I used too much of a credit, that my entire credit score would be ruined for life. And that's just not how it works. So first myth is that checking your credit score will actually negatively affect your credit score, which is just not true. They're comparing this to what's called a hard inquiry, where actually someone is going into your credit score and analyzing it to determine if you're going to get a loan. That can affect your credit score because, again, that goes down on the marks on the books. But when you go to check it, it is simply you just keeping track of it, and it is not reported. Feel free to check your credit score as much as you want. It will not affect your credit score at all. The second and most annoying myth when it comes to your credit score is that if you have a low credit score, or if it drops significantly, that is really hard to bring it back up. My credit score jumps up and down anywhere from 25 to 100 points every few months. And the reason for that is some months I'll use a lot of my credit card because I'm using it to leverage something like an investment, or simply just buying something for the house, and I know I'm going to pay it off over the next couple months. Because as long as you're not going to get a loan or need a loan in the next few months, it doesn't matter if your credit score drops. When it comes to utilizing your credit, as long as you pay it down as quick as you can, it will then just bounce right back up. So for example, if I were to spend $10,000 on my credit card, and that's all the money that I was available on my credit card, meaning I'm using 100%, well, if the credit report actually goes out at the end of the month and I spend the $10,000 and the next day I pay it off, it won't affect my credit score at all. Now imagine that same scenario, but I wait 2 days to pay it off, and within those 2 days it reports it to the credit bureau. So the same thing happened. The only difference is I waited maybe an extra day, or maybe it just happens that that's the day that they send out the information to the credit bureau. Well, once you go to pay it off the next month, it comes in, it says it's cleared, and your credit score jumps right back up. So again, if you are not applying for an auto loan, or you need a credit card anytime soon, or you're buying a house for a mortgage, you don't necessarily need a good credit score today. You just need to be able to understand that when you need those things, that you should be prepping a couple months in advance to make sure that your credit is as good as possible. So don't freak out if you don't have good credit today. Unless you're trying to buy a house in the next few months, it's not going to be an issue. Having a low credit score does not affect you at all, unless again you are trying to get money from lenders. So to sum up, let's go over a quick tip on how to keep a good credit score. So again, never be late on payments. That's the most important. And secondly, you can use this really cool hack to make sure that your credit utilization is low. So let's just say that you've got $1,000 of available credit on a credit card or multiple credit cards, and you're only using $200 a month. Well, you're using 20% of your credit cards, and that's a 20% on your credit utilization. But let's say you go apply for another credit card worth $1,000. So now you have $2,000 of available credit, but you're still only using the $200 a month. You go from 20% credit utilization to 10%. So you're able to cut it in half with no change to how much you're spending, and all you had to do was simply apply for another credit card. So for example, I have $100,000 in available credit. I use around $20,000 a month on my credit cards, but if I wanted to open up another credit card worth $100,000, I would technically be only using 10% on my credit utilization, which will allow my credit score to be a little bit higher. So the biggest con with this is that you potentially might not be financially savvy. You might be tempted to use that money. So be very, very careful when it comes to this hack, that you're not going to use it just because you have the available credit there. But again, this can really help keep your credit score up by keeping your credit utilization down. Now, this was just a quick video on what a credit score is, how it works, and some quick tips and hacks. But I'm gonna go in depth on other videos as to what is important types of credit, what's the difference between good debt and bad debt. So stay tuned. Comment below if you have any financial questions, and I'm gonna be answering those in my next video. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you all later.